Hello, everyone. Om Shanti. Good evening. Um, Happy to have you all here. This is our monthly talk organized by the Brahma Kumari's Upton Park Center. Today, we are going to be talking about finding meaning in a chaotic world. Uh, Today's day and age is one which is extremely fast paced and new things are happening all the time. We have a very fast lifestyle. There's a lot of media consumption, new technologies being introduced, and climate change is also something that's very much real and very fast paced now. So it is not very unexpected that in our lives there's a lot of newness, there's a lot of uncertainty, which sometimes does lead to chaos taking shape in our lives. It doesn't help that the social media and the tech world invites a lot of information in our lives. So, all the misinformation, all the newness of navigating these challenges will probably impact us in some way or the other. So, how do we, in the middle of all of this, one, maintain a very calm and quiet lifestyle, two, make sense of whatever is happening around us, and three, decide how we want to lead our life? How do we make it meaningful in our own personal way? So, for this, I would like to invite our speaker today. Yogesh ji. He is someone who has been in the personal development and training space since the past 20 years. He has presented hundreds and hundreds of seminars, workshops, courses to a lot of different industries, actually. He has worked with businesses, hospitals, universities, youth organizations, community groups in various parts of the world, including but not limited to the UK, the US, Australasia, Europe, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, India, the Caribbean. I could tell you that he has worked across the map, and that would still be very true. At the moment, though, over the last 17 years, he has worked in and around Turkey, making presentations on various topics. And today he's here with us. So we are very happy to have you here, very happy to see what you share with us today. And the stage is all yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Garvey. Thank you so much. And hello and good evening to everyone from Istanbul. It's a pleasure to be able to share some ideas with you tonight, which I hope will be meaningful and also practical for you in terms of using them in your own lives. And what I'm going to be sharing tonight, excuse me, will be partly autobiographical, as I've been on this inner spiritual journey for most of my life. And it's always been important to me to live some kind of meaningful life, surrounded by what sometimes feels like a meaningless world. And so, as Garvey was mentioning, that today with so much social media, it does seem as though every person has become a broadcaster and shares their take on current events in the world. And so it's very difficult to know what is truth, what is reality, and to separate information from misinformation and also from disinformation. And so let's ask ourselves that how to live a meaningful life in the midst of all of the chaos of what we receive through our social media, and ask ourselves, well, what we see, it's telling us sometimes that life is sacred, and sometimes it's telling us life is cheap. So, for example, if one person is pulled out alive from under the rubble of a destroyed building, we celebrate, and we should celebrate, that one life is saved. But at the same time, when 100 or more are killed in some attack somewhere, in some missile strike somewhere, it's just a statistic. So the question arises, well, where is the meaning in all of this? Is life sacred, or is life cheap? And certainly for me, as I was growing up, these questions were very poignant, very important for me to explore, so that I could live some kind of life of response to the conditions that we find ourselves in. And spirituality has helped to make me aware that the place to start from in terms of finding meaning in your life and making a meaningful contribution to life is by understanding my own self and trying to live up to the highest values possible. I'd like to share a few slides with you as well tonight, which will help me to further explain these ideas. So here comes the first one. So here is an image that you've probably seen fairly often on the weather reports. And it's an image of a huge storm, a hurricane. And just observe how powerful this phenomenon of nature is. It reminds me of a few years ago when I was traveling in the Caribbean. I was on the island of Saint Martin, and it was visited by one of the biggest hurricanes on record. Hurricane Irma, it was called. And the size of that hurricane apparently was the size of France, the size of the country of France. And so what do you do when you're faced with such a powerful storm of nature? There's not much you can do. But as this image is showing us, that at the very center of this storm, there is a relative area of stillness. And that is known as the eye of the storm. And if you were to go into the storm and tell the storm to stop, I don't like this, stop, then the storm would simply sweep you away. If you were to go to the eye of the storm and stay in the eye of the storm, then to some degree you would experience some calmness and some safety. And this really is a good metaphor also for the chaos that we find ourselves in. As Garvey was mentioning, the toys of technology, the changing world around us, the concerns regarding climate change, and even more currently, wars and the question of nuclear power and so on. So many things happening around us which can cause us to lose our peace of mind. And if we don't pay attention, then the storm which is happening outside of us, the chaos outside of us, can enter inside us and cause chaos in our minds in terms of stress, anxiety, nervousness, tension, and so on. So therefore, it's important to understand and have proper context of why things are the way they are. And when there is proper understanding and perspective, then my response towards that can be proportionate and meaningful. Now, when it comes to the conditions in the world, I find there are three main groups of people. So one type of person looks at what's happening in the world, the chaos, the corruption, the violence, and so on. And such a person may become very disheartened, very upset, very emotional, and maybe very angry. And this kind of person may try to fight the chaos that's happening around them. But of course, if I am trying to fight chaos with the energy of chaos, with anger or with aggression, then I'm using the same energy to fight against what I do not like. And therefore, there can never be a solution if I'm simply using the same energy which I'm actually trying to remove. And so where there is anger, aggression, and this kind of frustration, it may bring some kind of immediate temporary response, but which of course will not last for very long. Then there's a second kind of person who looks at the chaos in the world and says, yes, I see what's happening is bad. It's not good. I don't like it, but I'm okay and my life is okay. I have what I need. My family has their needs, got a good job. I feel fine. So I'm not really bothered. I don't pay too much attention to what's happening in the world. I don't watch the news and I live in my own little bubble. So there are people like that who simply are concerned only with their own lives. But then there's a third kind of person. And I would say this is the group that we are interested in. And that's the kind of person who sees what's happening in the world, sees the chaos, doesn't like it, knows that things can be better. But this person isn't upset or angry, nor is that person dismissive or tries to escape from the situation, but rather asks himself or herself, how can I live a life of response to the situation? What can I do to help to make some kind of constructive change? And I think it is here that it is necessary to explore spirituality. Now, spirituality is not an option. It's not an additional extra you can choose if you wish. But spirituality is at the very heart of a human being. It's as important as our breathing and daily living. We need to understand how the spirit works, how emotions work, why we feel the way we feel. And our emotions are so important because they are driving our behavior, the choices and decisions we make, whether it's a person living in a small house with his or her family, or we're looking at the highest levels of leadership in the world. Our emotional condition is influencing the way we see things and our decision making. So in this context, I'd like to share an image with you. And this was something which was very meaningful for me when I was in my teenage years. And I remember walking to school one day and the news was filled with all the chaos in the world, all the calamities that we hear about. And I really had this feeling in my heart that how should I live my life? How would I define or measure success for myself? And there were many options around me in terms of what I could do. And also even more options were being told to me by relatives and friends, do this, do that, do the other. But I felt I needed to sit quietly, talk to myself, listen to myself, to hear the voice, the call of my own inner being, the call of the soul, to feel what would make me feel that my life has some kind of meaning. And so I'd like to share this little image with you. So I called it the tree of calamities, as I think you can see here. And so what I saw was that all the conditions in the world, the calamities, which I would see as different forms of chaos, were like this, that in the form of the different branches of a tree. So we see, for example, in environmental pollution, and as you can read, political turmoil, terrorism, racial tension, hyperinflation, economic crisis, so on and so forth. So an ugly tree embodying all the different calamities and problems that we see all around us. And the question would arise of what's important, what's not important, what is right, what is wrong, who is leading us in the right direction in terms of improving the condition of humanity. And I found that people were trying to make a positive, constructive difference, but largely by throwing money at the problems. Now, of course, dealing with problems on the symptom level is one thing. And it helps to bring some kind of immediate temporary change. But in addition to solving these forms of chaos externally, it's also important to look at the root causes. That why do these conditions exist? What else should we be paying attention to if we really want things to improve? And how can we make a meaningful contribution towards improving the conditions? And so then if you look below the surface, if you look at the root causes of why these scenarios exist, then you find the root causes are hidden, of course, underneath the ground, beneath the soil. And it's basically these things. When your behavior is being driven by possessiveness, sense of attachment, or the energies of anger or selfishness, greed, jealousy, etc. It's the behaviors driven by these kinds of energies, it's the actions we perform driven by these energies, which have actually created this tree of calamities. So if we wish to remove this tree of calamities, if we wish to deal with it, then we also have to learn how to deal with these energies which are the root causes. And that's where spirituality, it plays a very big part in improving the human condition. These are all the roots. And what is the seed? The seed of all of these, as you can see, is this thing called ego. And so I found that in terms of making this meaningful contribution, let me behave in such a way that I can try and help things to improve in terms of how I may live my life or the job I do. But at the same time, and even more importantly, I also need to work on myself in terms of overcoming and transforming this thing called ego. And at the same time, let me be part of some kind of educational process so others may also learn, if they wish, on how to work on these things and transform them within themselves. And hence I found meaning coming into my life because I felt I could make some kind of difference, at least in myself and in the people around me. And so that's very important to know how I can make some kind of difference, some kind of contribution to the life around me. Let me show you one or two more slides, which then help us to understand how we are living our lives and perhaps where we need to take stock of what we're doing. So here is the basic plan that we are dropped into when we enter the world. So as you can see, on the left here is you, and on the right-hand side is what we may describe as the aim of life, what we wish to experience going through life. So if, for example, you are asked to share your wishes for a newborn child, you may say, or you may write to that person saying, I wish in your life you're always happy. I wish in your life you are surrounded by love. I wish in your life you have peace of mind. I wish for you that you're always secure, and so on. So if a person experiences these things in life, you may say it's been a good life. It's been an okay life. It's been a comfortable life. But then we are told, in order to achieve that aim, there are some means which you first need to acquire. And so we are told, first you need to get a good education. Because if you do that, you'll get a good job. And if you have a good job, then you'll earn good money. And through that, you'll be able to have perhaps the house of your dreams, the car of your dreams, holidays, travel, other luxuries, etc. Then you'll be happy. So all of these things were considered to be the means that we should acquire in order to reach the real aim. But what has happened over time is that the means has become the new aim. So our focus goes upon all of these things: education, job, money, house. We push ourselves, and also we may push family members, we may push children, etc., to acquire all of these things. And perhaps we have forgotten the real aim is actually also to be at peace and to be happy. So the question arises, can I acquire the means and also have the aim at the same time? It's not one or the other. How would I measure success? Is it by acquiring the means, but also having stress, also being unhappy maybe in my relationships, also battling with my own mind and with anxieties and maybe not able to sleep properly, maybe requiring various forms of medication to feel happy or to calm down? Can I be living a meaningful life where I am actually excelling, progressing in what I do? But at the same time, I'm also paying attention to the being part where I am at peace with myself. Ask the self the question, am I the boss of my own happiness? Who owns your happiness? Is it really in my hands, or is it in the hands of situations, circumstances, other people? Spirituality asks us to turn the spotlight upon myself and ask myself, am I taking care of my own mind? Am I simply living externally, or do I have attention to how my thoughts are working, how my consciousness is working? Am I growing internally at the same time as perhaps developing myself in my career, in my working life? And there comes the importance of self-awareness and meditation. I find that any discussion on how we can improve things in the world must include a discussion also on how we can improve ourselves. How can we be better human beings, in addition to how can we improve things in the world in terms of what we see on the news or strategies or economy or politics, etc. At the same time as doing all that, we also need to ask the question, how can I deal with my ego? How can we learn to forgive each other? How can we build bridges of cooperation and understanding between us? If we're doing both of these things, then there is some kind of meaningful progress in our lives and also helping the world to improve. And so this then raises the question, which I think is important for every person, with which dynamic am I living my life? Am I living what we call as the outside in model, or can I live the inside out model? Now, the outside in model is where I try to acquire, grab, consume things from the outside in order for me to feel good on the inside. That's pretty much how the world works today. That's how consumerism works. Get something from the outside, make you feel good on the inside, but it only works for a short time. The spiritual model asks us, can you live from the inside out? So take, for example, the emotion of happiness and ask the question, what is the basis of my happiness? Is it that when I get X, Y, Z, when I have the things that I want, then I'll feel happy inside? Or does it work the other way around? Can I learn to locate, activate, and awaken the happiness which actually is already within me and allow that to emanate and radiate out into my relationships? And this is the secret. One of the secrets of spirituality is that contained within every person, there are already these seeds of excellence, the seed of peace, the seed of happiness, the seed of love, the seed of strength. They are already within the consciousness of every person. But those seeds need to be watered in order for them to germinate. And hence, this is where meditation comes in. And why we need to do that is because through the day, we get lost. We get lost in the things of the world. We forget to spend time listening to and talking to my own self. Now, in this regard, I have found that there are two main groups of people when it comes to meditation. There are people who meditate, and there are meditators. What is the difference between the two? Many people do some kind of meditation, and it could be a tool to relax, to calm down, to deal with the stresses and strains of life. And this can be enough for a person. But to be a meditator means that it is a lifestyle. And that means as I go through the day-to-day life, one part of me is naturally vigilant and just checking myself to see what kind of thoughts am I producing. Am I overthinking as I go through the day? Am I producing waste thoughts? Am I throwing away this precious, precious fuel called thought power? And so a meditator makes it into a lifestyle, rather like an athlete would make healthy eating into a lifestyle. Because for an athlete to maintain optimum weight is essential. So too, a meditator will have this awareness as they pass through the day, whether it's at work or in the traffic or even in conversation. Am I overusing and misspending my thought power? And because a meditator has attention on that, then such a person is able to conserve and save thought energy. And when thought energy is saved, then you are able to redirect it into other areas of your life. For example, you can develop more willpower, whereas before you lacked it. You have more courage to face a situation which perhaps you have always avoided. You have the power to tolerate something or someone which before made you upset or angry. So where did these new abilities come from? They are all the result of economizing, not wasting your thought energy due to unnecessary thinking. Hence, your relationships become more stable, more harmonious, and also more meaningful. And another important element of meaning in life is the feeling that I am growing, I am evolving, I am maturing as a person, as a human being. I'm learning to have greater control, a very natural control over my own emotions. I feel more in touch with my personal sense of purpose in my life. The day doesn't just pass by as another 24 hours closer to my departure, to the day of death. But 24 hours have passed by, and I have actually grown as a person. I'm having greater insights into myself and into understanding life. And quite automatically, as we are making these discoveries and we feel that we are growing and evolving, it generates more motivation to live. Life will not feel like an existence, but it will feel like I'm living. Existing is like being dragged through life and is often accompanied by quotes related to have tos. I have to do this. I have to go to work. I have to look after so-and-so. I have to do X, Y, Z. If life is full of have tos, it's an existence. But when we move from existing to living, life becomes full of I choose to, I want to, I do it because it is my choice. So all depends upon my consciousness, how I see myself, how I see others, I see life. Just like to share the last little slide here, which kind of summarizes some of these ideas. I'd mentioned ego a few times and how today the chaos is largely ego-based. We see the madness of the ego today, which seems to be consuming pretty much the whole world. And what is ego? If we analyze it, ego is basically this energy which is generated due to identifying with the things that I do and the things that I have. And so identifying with doing, I do my job, I take care of my responsibilities and my roles and my family and so on and so forth. When we identify with that, it begins to generate this thing called ego. And together with this, identifying with the things I have. I have a nationality. I have a caste, culture, religion, social standing in life, um, gender of the body, so on and so forth. When we are identifying with the doings and havings of life, we give birth to the ego. And where there is ego, there will be ego-based emotions. And then, of course, life gets very complex and also unpleasant when there are ego clashes with other people. What spirituality is inviting us to do is to step back from the having zone, from the doing zone, and come to the being zone. The being zone is the reminder of my true identity. I am the spiritual energy. I am the soul. I am that living conscious being. And here I am beyond labels, roles, and masks. This really is the beginning of the solution to anything. Remembrance of true identity. And first, we need to experiment with this in our own lives. Experiment living as the spiritual energy. Experiment living as a soul. Be aware of yourself as that spiritual energy as you pass through the day-to-day life, and just see how different you feel. See how you shift from having emotional reactions into being a person with true feeling. There's a difference between emotions and feelings. When we are in this soul aware or soul conscious stage, then our conversations, our communications become more meaningful. We are able to choose the words which come out of our mouths, and those words really represent what we wish to say. And the whole of life becomes more pleasant when I'm living in that soul-aware state. So I'm going to stop there, hoping this has some usefulness for you. Just going to hand back to Garvey.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this very interesting topic. I personally have a whole bunch of notes that I will take back with me because everything that you shared was very valuable for us. I'm sure everybody else would agree. Like we have shared on the chat, if anybody has questions, feel free to ask on the chat. You can ask, you can unmute yourself as well, or I could start with the question in the meantime, if you're okay with that. Um, Firstly, I just wanted to uh, just appreciate the metaphor that is presented at the start of the talk about being in the eye of the storm, and finding that once you start noticing where you are and what is around you, and you just find yourself there long enough, you start to understand things have slowed down and calmed down enough. And I really resonated with that. And towards the end, you started sharing, these very valuable terms personally for me about purpose and growth and evolvement. uh, I wanted to ask if you have any practical prompts of how we can shift our thought dialogue from the have to mode to the I choose to mode. I understand that simplistically changing that I have to go to work to I choose to go to work is very simplistic in just saying it like that. But how do you bring that actual transformation about? If you could share a few tips here and there about tiny changes we can make in our day to do that, apart from everything else that you shared.
Yeah. Well, the thing I think is behind all of this is really being very clear about my personal sense of purpose. This really is behind um, having true motivation in life. And let me share a little bit about this, that purpose is a thing which you discover in yourself. It's not something you create from by creative thinking.
Mm.
Everything has a purpose. And a purpose can simply be described as the usefulness of something or its function. Now, let's look at nature, for example. The sun has its own purpose. The moon, the stars, the wind, the deserts, the oceans, everything has its unique purpose, which means its unique contribution or usefulness to the whole system. Even
Mm.
inanimate objects have their own purpose. For example, here is a pen. It has a purpose. Over here, I have a phone. It has its purpose. There is a lamp behind me. It has a purpose. Purpose means everything is useful in its own way. And then the question arises, if everything is useful in its own particular individual way, then what am I useful for? What is my sense of purpose in my life? What is my raison d'etre, my reason for being? What I have found in my own journey is when I became more aligned with my personal sense of purpose, even if I was doing something which I didn't particularly like, I didn't enjoy, but I would find new meaning as to why this is the right thing for me to do at this moment. I may not be enjoying it, but here are the benefits of doing this at this moment. When I became aware of the benefits and the value, I realized, let me do this with all my heart. And then
Yeah.
even the thing itself changes. You find even your life changes because you're doing something from the right perspective rather than from a kind of deficit-based disliking or rejecting energy. So I just
Mm.
encourage everyone, especially young people, to explore my sense of purpose in my life. It's really the key to everything.
Mm. Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in what you said. And while you were saying it, I thought of how being creative would actually be a great strength in these circumstances where if you had to find value and purpose in the task that you were doing, even if you disliked it, if you are just creative enough to tweak it to match your purpose and align with what you want to do, maybe you would want to do it more or you would like it more. And like you said, the task would shift and your purpose would keep evolving and it will make more sense as it goes along. So I think there's great value in that. Thank you so much. I personally don't have any more questions. Would anybody else have anything to ask? If not, then in that case, we would be going ahead with a quick, short meditation uh, soon.
Oh, hi there. Hi, Brother Yogesh. Thank you for this inspiring talk. I just got a quick question. Do you know when, say, for example, your own, behaviors like worries can block your own inner qualities? So how uh, can I sort of overcome that? I know you mentioned about meditation, but if your worries and your mind is wandering during meditation, how to handle that?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for the question. Meditation is one part of what can help us to overcome. Meditation provides the strength or the energy to be able to do. But along with meditation, we need spiritual understanding to know how to guide or direct the spiritual energy which we get through meditation. So there's a need for spiritual study. And what I mean by that is we need to understand more clearly, perhaps, the law or the philosophy of karma, action and reaction. We need to understand the dynamics of relationships. The more we understand these things, the more we realize that sometimes what seems to be a worrying situation, in fact, could be a blessing in disguise. Sometimes a dark curtain may appear in front of you, but hidden behind that curtain, there may be some real treasure waiting for you. When we study spirituality regularly, like every day, if we are involved in spiritual study, our consciousness rises and we're able to see situations from a very different perspective. In simple terms, we're able to give higher meaning to the events around us, the events in our life. And when we give higher meaning to the events, our emotions are very different. This is a topic I didn't take up today, but there's basically three things: events, meaning, and emotions. Generally, what happens is we think that events create our emotions, but they don't. It's not that situations or circumstances create your emotions, but it's the meaning you are giving to the events that's creating the emotions. When we are consumed by the events, we have worry, stress, tension, and so on. But if we pay more attention to what meaning am I giving to these events, can I give higher meaning to these events? As I give higher meaning, my emotions also change. In order to give higher meaning, we need to study more spirituality, so our perspective changes. So I would say there's a need for maybe a deeper exploration of the laws of spirituality. And then the feelings are very different.
Yeah, thank you very much, because you also referred about just, go beyond, like not just look superficial level, look at the underlying cause, which then I suppose you explore that at a deeper level through spirituality to get a different perspective.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I will do that.
Shall we proceed towards the meditation part of the session?
Okay. Okay, so just going to round off with a simple meditation. If you're able to, it's good to have your back straight, feet flat on the floor. If you're in a chair, be comfortable, but also be alert at the same time. So in this meditation, we spend a few moments to be with myself. The world outside is full of movement and sound, the world of action. It's the world of doing. And in that world of doing, sometimes there is chaos. And there can be confusion. But there is another world that also exists. My inner world, the world of my thoughts, my feelings, my experiences. My inner world is in my own hands. Let me be in this inner world. I ask myself, who am I? Behind the roles, behind the labels, behind the masks, who am I? Come to the awareness of my true self. I am not what I do, not what I have. Yeah, the spiritual energy. I am light. I am the soul. Living diamond in the center of the forehead. I am peace, eternal. I am light. Let me dwell in this thought. Peace, eternal, light. Live in this awareness, free. Mind is free. Thoughts, choice.
Thank you so much.